Wilder, like what was going on in the corner. So we're giving all Parker all the credit and Andy Lee all the credit for pulling it off. But why the fuck when you look at Wilder's best knockouts, it's when he walks to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
When he walks to him, when he walked to Ortiz, when he walked to Dominic Brazil, hold his feet in the middle of the ring and walk to the guy. What the fuck was stopping him from walking to Joseph Parker? He was right there. I know he's moving his head, but when he was fighting on the back foot, he gave himself no chance. So probably fucking
Rob, you've gone a bit muffled. Oh,
performance.
there, you're back.
Sorry, he probably could muster one more good performance if he made an adjustment. But I think when the way he was talking afterwards, 1 foot out of the sport. His 2 feet were out of the sport by the
Oh, well, I don't know where his 2 feet were, but they were barely in front of Parker all night, were they?
Yeah, it's just maybe it's the ayahuasca or whatever. Like, but why he didn't fucking just go walk to him, I don't know. Like,
yeah. Take Aymz says, Rob, turn down your DAZN feed or Matty will be on to you. Well, it's just as well DAZN weren't televising anyway, because you wouldn't have heard them punches landing anyway.
yeah. Like the silent movies, everyone got the money back.
Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, well, I said we'd go, but we might as well carry on talking as long as the boys are happy. As in, Des, I know you were watching the Day of Reckoning over the weekend. Any thoughts, any feelings on Wilder, AJ in particular?
I've got to say, I think there was a Ben Davison bounce with AJ. I think Ben Davison was in the right place at the right time. I think AJ was really confused out in Texas. I think he was a little bit unsure of himself with McCracken towards the end. And I think Ben Davison has just been in the right place at the right time. And I used this analogy a couple of weeks ago, just like a football manager, like Sean Dyche can come into Everton and think, look, there's been a lot of mistakes being made here. Let's go back to basics. I think Ben Davison has gone back to basics with AJ and just got him doing what he's good at. And I will say this, as good as I thought AJ looked, I was amazed at how bad Volin looked.
Why did he look so bad? I thought he looked out of shape for a start.
It was terrible. I don't get it. Maybe he had the sparring partner mentality. Maybe he was spooked because him and AJ have done quite a bit in the past. I don't know. But, that was Volin. Wilder looked awful. I think Andy Lee and Parker got their game plan spot on. I really enjoyed watching the way Parker was educatingly pressing Wilder. And like Rob said, I don't know if Parker stuck Wilder on the back foot, but Wilder stayed on the back foot all night. And I've been watching Wilder since 2008. He's the fighter that can't fight going backwards. But they allowed him to do it. It was crazy. I'll touch on Bivol. I don't know hear what you lot want to say. He's the most quintessentially Russian fighter I've ever seen. He's everything Russia produces. They're so pragmatic, so dedicated, so disciplined. He goes out, he does a good first minute, he has a breather in the second minute, doesn't give nothing away, and in the last minute, he nicks the last 30 seconds. He's all about just winning rounds, winning fights. I was disappointed because I had a brilliant accumulator with Bivol to stop Arthur, but he just never put his foot on the pedal. And I thought Arthur was ready to go after round 3 or 4. I don't know how you saw it.
And then he only went down in the last round, well, the 11th round, I think it was. He touched down Arthur.
And even in round 12, he didn't want to come out of his comfort zone, did he, Bivol? Bivol's this guy that will never come out of a comfort zone.
He's like what Steve was saying earlier. It's like he just does enough to win. He doesn't give a fuck about it. And he needs opponents, I think, to bring the most out of him. Like you see the best of him when he's up against a bit of adversity, like Canelo, or he's trying to make a statement. But if he just has to go through the fucking motions, we've seen it a million times. Death taxes and Bivol by decision. Like those guys, he should have stopped along the way 4 or 5 years ago. He could have stopped Joe. There's so many like that he could have stopped if he put his foot on the pedal and just didn't bother. Like. So that's disappointing sometimes, but he is brilliant to watch. But I agree with Des about AJ. I was going to say it. I didn't like Eddie's horns out fucking screaming the house down about this new team and everything's back. And he just did fundamental shit. Like he got on the jab and he changed the levels with the right hand to the body and to the head and just kept balling guessing, but just basically just got on the jab. Like it wasn't fucking I know he tried a little Lomachenko pivot in the first round, but it wasn't as if he just got him back to it. But like I said the other night on the pod, I think that relationship's probably going to be a good one, like because AJ needs people to blow smoke up his ass and him believing that he's fucking, you know what I mean, a killer again. And maybe Ben Davison's that guy to do it. Like, he certainly seems like he believes he is, because fucking seconds after the fight, he's fucking nominating himself to put the Usyk result right for AJ. So I think he's backing himself for the job, to say the least. I'd say that'll be the last you see of Derek James, man. He's be fucking polishing his Trainer of the Year trophy from last year for the foreseeable.
I never thought AJ out in Texas with Derek James surrounded by Charlo and Spence. I didn't think that was a good cultural fit.
You always said that, to be fair. Yeah.
I never thought it was a good cultural fit. I think AJ needs to be down the road. He needs to be amongst his own, like Ben Davison, Barry Smith. Who else in that gym? Who's the kid who's the kid that just beat Conlon in that upset?
Oh, Jordan Gill.
Jordan Gill's in that gym. Lee Wood's in that gym. There's a lot of young pros in that gym. So AJ is going to be the top man in that gym, and he'll be comfortable there. It's a real good cultural fit. And I just think Ben Davison is just right place, right time. He's going to do a Sean Dyche. He's going to just resurrect AJ. I don't know how far AJ will go, and we'll find out an awful lot about AJ and Ben Davison's relationship when AJ is 3 or 4 rounds down in a fight and someone's putting it on him. But for now, I think it's a really good fit.
That's when you're going to find out he's more like Michael Beale than fucking Sean Dyche.
Class. Nothing for somethings in the chat. He says, hello, lads. MB says, I was left a bit disappointed with the Saudi card, as mad as it sounds. He went on to say, who picked a tricky moving body puncher for Makhmudov on that sort of platform as well, Aymz? No better question than to bring you in on that one. In fact, I have a better question for you. They were talking earlier about possible next opponents for AJ. Zhilei Zhang's name was mentioned. I think they'll put him in with Parker sooner than Zhang. I know he's 40 years of age. He's getting on a bit, but he's a fast-handed southpaw with nice power as well. I think that might send AJ back into the dark dungeon.
I don't think either of those fights are particularly on AJ's radar there, Parker or Zhilei Zhang, especially with how Parker, the first fight, went with all the holding and the Italian ref. That's not been seen since, I believe, if I remember correctly. Anyway, in those top-level fights, that was a real dud of a fight there. Watching that one back, I believe AJ's kind of set his stall out with what he wants, and that's the belts, whoever's holding the belts. Although Hrgović right now isn't holding the belt, either they may do if the belts fragment, which they seem to be, if the IBF hold up their ruling, or Hrgović will be the next before the belt comes, if something can be applied out. But no, I don't know what really kind of comes for AJ next, apart from a belt chase. And he says he seems to be open to a Deontay Wilder fight, even though Wilder lost. I don't know why Wilder lost. I don't know if he'd been to some sort of retreat somewhere and tried some sort of psychedelic drug. He never made mention of it. So I don't know what was the reason as to behind Wilder's non-effort really there. But no, I'm not sure yet just what AJ does, unless it's for some sort of belt contention. Otherwise on that card, like, pick up on the same sort of points. I thought, and I said it in the chat as well with Bivol specifically, we talk about high IQs in boxing and boxing IQs. I think Bivol's IQ has to be questioned to a degree. I think he exhibits high IQ, but he has to be questioned as to whether he understands where what position he gets his opponents in, because he's not capitalizing on a fighter who's not his level, not returning back, doesn't have the punch power to knock him out in one punch. Why isn't he stepping on the gas until the later rounds? Why is he taking that long to do that, and why isn't he getting them out? There's something that I can't come to a conclusion on really as to why he doesn't do it, or maybe he just doesn't want to do it. Maybe it's part of this whole. There was a feeling that he deliberately lowered his level in the Craig Richards fight, which then got him the Canelo fight. Is it that part of the equation there that Bivol's thinking forward and then just the moment that he's in? Otherwise as well, I also thought Jai Opetaia has got to start being matched up against fighters that are in his ability level as well, because the last 2 fights have been dangerous matchmaking, not worth, in my opinion, the money laid out to be. Jordan Thompson was battered for those 4 rounds, and then poor Elisaro was wiped out with the rope, it could be a lot more dangerous. The way he fell and his back of his head hitting that rope, and don't know what the kind of telling effects will be for Ellis Zorro. But yeah, I think Jai Patai needs to stay away from now being fed opponents and actually have some proper competition, whether that be at cruiserweight or heavyweight. And by the way, the IBF were right to strip him. And Eddie Hearn knew going into the fight, with the exception happened with Thompson. So I don't know why there was the crowing and complaining about him being stripped. They knew what the situation was. So that's the decision they made. So they have to live with it. So the IBF title was stripped from Opataya. So if he wants, he has to go fight for it back, or like I said, move up a division. But yeah, no, look, the heavyweights. I thought AJ looked pretty good. I don't think this is really the return of the destroyer AJ. I think AJ just has found some answers now with Ben Davison and the research, whatever it is they do, the film study. I think that all kind of lends into how AJ's ethos is of preparing for fights and wanting those answers and wanting those questions that he's got answered as well too.
Do you think, Aymz, sorry to interrupt you, do you think the fact that the preparation and the videos and all that, whether he's actually learning anything from it, the fact that he feels like he's doing it makes him mentally more prepared, if anything?
Yeah, I think that's all it is. It's just direction. I think AJ's a fighter who in camp, you work out the inputs to the controls. If you're looking at this, I'm looking at this like a PlayStation analogy. You got your controller in front of you. You put all the inputs in, and AJ will go perform all those inputs that you put in, as opposed to being a fighter who you give them their own six. You give them the tools, and then you go do it. With some sort of loose kind of game plan going. And every fighter in the team will have the game plan, but something more strict and something more relaxed is the stricter guide is, I think, what AJ thrives off of. And also I think as well, you got to lend credit to AJ if this works out, because AJ's doing the inverse or the opposite of what Tyson Fury is doing. Tyson Fury, the accomplished fighter, going into now being the knockout artist or looking for those knockouts. AJ doing the other way around, I think, is a lot harder, being a knockout fighter going into someone who's more of a complete boxer. If he pulls it off, he's got to get a lot of credit, whether it be through Derek James, Ben Davison, but himself specifically as well, is to turn himself that sort of way at this sort of stage in his career. Having the grounding from the Olympic side, of course, kind of gives him that platform to be able to do that and rely on and go to that side of him. But in this stage of his career, to go to that side, I think if he pulls it off, claims a title as well, I think he deserves a lot of credit for it.
Aymz, just quickly back to Wilder. I think his mentality's gone. This is a guy before he was a stone cold killer, talking about bodies on the record, as distasteful as people felt that was. Now he's talking about going home to his family and making smart investments. I think his complete mentality's changed. But more importantly than that, have you been zoning in on the old photos, Aymz, to see if there was any egg weights in Parker's gloves?
I haven't been zoning in, but look, don't want to take this down the wrong sort of path, but these psychedelics and things that Deontay Wilder is taking, aren't they supposed to really kind of remove or dull your ego and make you think of life in a different perspective? And part of the big package with Deontay Wilder was his ego. The fact that he's a bronze bomber, the fact that he can knock you out, the fact that he believed it, the fact that he believed that it was to knock out any opponent. Wilder, I don't know, he said all the right things in the build-up, but he was a lot more. One of my friends, Donna Colby, who we know well, Donna said when he saw him over at PFL, when him and Ngannou faced off, he said Wilder was so presidential. The way he would came up, people would come up to him and bothered him all night, and he didn't say anything. He took the chance to take every photo with every person that came up to him. Not that he's saying that he wasn't doing that beforehand, but the whole kind of perspective change of him not being that bronze bomber, someone who's been more affable as opposed to being someone who's on the front foot and wanting to chase something down, wanting to hold on to his title, wanting to really kind of go for the kill. Does he need to find that again? Probably. Is it still there again? I don't know if those sort of things take that out of him. He said, I saw a Michael Benson tweet, I didn't watch the interview, but I think he's been on one of these channels and said, look, I need to find that again. But if those things take that out of him, then he's not going to find it.
No.
They reckon it's the same chemical that's released from your kidneys when you die, so it's giving you the euphoric feeling of fucking going to heaven. And apparently after you take it, you have this eternal inner peace. So if any listeners know where I can get some for the missus, let me know.
I'm going to say, how Dominic Brazil felt now after you ate him.
Don't set me up like that, Steve, for fuck's sake, man. You want us to stay on the air.
Sorry. Oh, dear.
Just want to say, did anyone see? I don't want to have a belly of the week, obviously, and we won't be having it because we won't be back. But McGregor sitting beside fucking Ronaldo ringside, and him being interviewed by Chisora, and he's like, Chisora's like, what did you want to come see, bro? And he's like, I want to see Wilder's crack in the flesh, man. I'm looking at the guy with that frame and wondering where does he get that power. So I want to see the thing. Do you get me? I want to see it. It's like, how is this fella getting to Saudi Arabia off his nut? How is this happening? Fuck me.
Oh dear, some fun and frolics. Yeah, we won't be back till the new year. Before we close out, having a look at Inoue. Go ahead. Yeah.
Maybe you could ask the doctor like what these psychedelics do to.
Doctor hasn't replied to my last couple of messages. To be honest, I think he's had enough of me.
No, that's a real shame.
Yeah, I think the doctor's had enough of me, Rob.
We made him, and now he thinks he's too good for us.
Yeah. He thinks those biblical tweets are gonna serve him on X. He's got another thing coming, man. He needs to come back to us.
But we welcome him back.
We'll welcome him back.
But those fights with Fury as well, they might have taken a whole load out of him.
I think they did.
That's what.
I think that's what happened.
Kevin Barry said to me, "Look, he had those last two fights were real tough of him, and maybe Fury's taken his soul, as the crude phrasing goes, and it might have been the case that two grueling fights against someone of Fury's stature and the punch power coming back from him, it might not be the same in that sort of sense as well. With the dent in his head from those egg weights, he said apparently that he's got like those injuries from it that might have changed him.
Let's not forget in the second Fury fight, he came in a lot heavier than he normally.
Yeah,
weights. I think he came in 230 or something like that, didn't he?
231, I think it was.
Yeah. So he then had to go lose another fucking stone to make weight for the next fight, and went back down to 212. So, like, he's given up 212 versus nearly 270. Fury wasn't he, on the third fight? Like, that's serious punishment he took over those two fights. Definitely fucking took something from him, no doubt about it.
Well, no doubt about it. That's 100% correct, and we've seen it. History proves that. Sometimes a piece of a fighter is left in the ring, particularly on fights like what we saw Wilder and Fury 2 and Wilder and Fury 3. They was epic. And I'd be very surprised if both guys didn't leave a bit of themselves in the ring them nights.
Mm-hmm. Des, just while you're unmuted as well, Aymz mentioned about Dmitry Bivol. You said about him sort of clocking out the rounds and breaking it down bit by bit. A bit like Rigondeaux, not finishing off an opponent. Again, they're from that sort of ex-Soviet kind of communist school of amateurs, which might be a crude comparison. But Bivol, very similar as well, doesn't know when to just get in there and get the job done. He's so regimented in his thinking.
Yeah, exactly that. It's them guys had the same type of coaching. They spent they had a career in the amateurs, and they was very, very successful. And it was all about discipline. It was being very pragmatic. And Rigo's a perfect example of that. But there's loads of Cubans. Kindlin was the same. There's loads of Cubans that are incredibly successful, but it really wasn't about coming out your comfort zone. Or a better expression, they're not going to roll the dice. When Bivol, for example, looked at Arthur at say round 11, in his head he thought, right, I'm going to put my foot down now, and I'm going to roll the dice. But then the other part said, well, why do that? Go and win the first minute. Don't lose the second minute. Go and nick the last 30 seconds of the last minute. That's Russian. And that's just what he does. And it's a comfort zone thing. It's rolling the dice. It's a lifetime of being taught a certain way. The Cuban project, the Cuban program is the exact same as the Soviet program. So that's all it is with Bivol. He's just not got that. He's too logical about it. Do you remember when Vitaly Klitschko popped his shoulder against Chris Bird, I think it was, and he sat in his corner and very logically said, "No, that's enough for today. I'm gonna get this repaired, and I'll come back and I'll win another day." Yeah. That's very middle class. It's very educated Eastern European mentality, and it's logical. And us guys, we probably don't view boxing logically, but Bivol certainly does.
But there's the only point I'd come back on you, and that is the dice roll element, because at no point would it have been a dice roll for Dmitry in that fight with Arthur. He's not going to knock him out. He's not going to come back with a very minute chance that Arthur would come back with a punch from the gods. Right, you might count that in, but really, I think it shows a lack of understanding there at that final point for Bivol in that term of logic that he didn't go for it because he was beating all ends up. That's the criticism that I throw towards Bivol, that he really should.
I totally agree, Aymz. I think you're right. I can't get my head around it. In the way you frame that, then you're not rolling the dice. You're going to win this, and but I don't think Bivol ever wants to take himself in an uncomfortable place. And I'm trying to give another example in sport where we see it. I would love to have seen Bivol put his foot down, but it's just not in his makeup, is it? And I hear where you're going with that about his boxing IQ. Perhaps that's what he does lack. But I've met kids that come out of these Soviet programs and they spent 10 years under a certain regime. They can't help but go back to what they was taught. And I just think Bivol is that guy. But I do take your point, Aymz. It wouldn't have been rolling the dice. You would have stopped after, but he wouldn't do it, would he?
It's about time people got the fucking Rigondo memo, though, like, because, you know, Rigo could have probably stayed undefeated if he'd have stuck to his own path and just fucking stunk the joint out. He was kind of forced into going up weights and losing fights. Like, it's a thin line. So what does he want to do? Does he want to listen to the fucking public who are sick of these fucking decision wins, or does he want to take unnecessary risks? I mean, I had Rigo in the end going up fucking weight classes like big Japanese guys.
I think the difference is, Rob, mate, there's no money in Cuban brilliance, but there's always going to be money in Russian brilliance.
No, fair point.
So Bivol can stink the ass out, can't he? But he knows he's going to get looked after and paid.
But like, I remember when I used to fucking spar or whatever, I would fucking spar anyone, but I'd be fucking reluctant for a fight to break out. So if I could get someone on the end of the jab, get a breather, myself, finish the round, look good, I would have done it every time. So it's hard for me to criticize these guys. I used to be Rigo's biggest fanboy, cheering for him, but he even used to let me down when I was looking at the fight. I'd be like, I go to sleep after 6 rounds. Would you just fucking knock this guy out? Like, no. And I think he took a risk early on in his career, didn't he, against Theon Kennedy, and he got dropped. And he was like, ever since then, he was like, fuck that. I'm staying out here. You're not good enough to hit me. You're not going to hit me. Like,
and I take Aymz's point. It wouldn't have been rolling the dice. I see it the same way. But in Bivol's head, it's just not what he does.
Aymz, just on that as well, I don't know whether I was the only person who saw this. I haven't watched the fight back, which I probably should have done, but we mentioned about Arthur having nothing for him and rolling the dice, etc. I do think at the time that Arthur landed something to Bivol's body in one of the rounds that made him back off. Did I get that wrong?
No, I don't. I remember seeing that and I was thinking he was just trying to lure Arthur in and out of his shell. Right, that's completely how I read it, because I remember seeing that punch. I thought that was like a nothing punch. Okay, it was literally just tagging Bivol to the body, and Bivol's never shown a loose or weak body to be affected by something. From how I recollect it, that wasn't a power punch from Arthur in any sort of way. So
Arthur never came forward or anything, which indicates what you're saying is absolutely.
He knew. I think you heard like the shouts from the ringside, and Sonny be like, "You hurt him,"
Yeah.
But it just wasn't the case, and Arthur knew it, and Bivol I think was trying to lure him out.
Fair enough. Your point completely stands then.